You've been finding yourself triggered by the flag issue and getting very annoyed by what's going on and what people are saying. Please stay tuned, because I'm offering here a StarPeace perspective on what's going on and actually what I've been guided to share with everyone, and what we can do to work with the energies that are currently very much in conflict to create resolution, because that's the name of the game right now, my friends. And I want to remind everybody that when there's a flag issue, it's worth thinking about false flag issues too. And when all the attention is over here, where is it being directed away from? This is very important, because we all know about false flags, but right now we're having a conversation about real flags and whether it's okay to fly our flags or not. And are we actually going to evolve beyond nationalism into unity consciousness? Because that's what I wanted to speak about. Now, before I get going, when you watch this, please let me know whether you are currently triggered by the situation and have a strong opinion about it, whether you feel indifferent about it, or whether you've never even heard of it until you stumbled across this video, because it's very much going to depend on what you are tuned into. Are you tuned into 3D world of the media, the mainstream media, and what the mainstream media is saying? Are you tuned into the alternative media channels, the 4D world, which is more about what people aren't saying? Or are you allowing yourself to actually be a conduit of the frequencies of peace and unity consciousness, and allowing yourself to be neutrality, and also to claim the fact that out of this you want only good to come? Because when we set powerful intentions like that, and we are heart-centered and soul-influenced, that's when powerful forces are at play and miracles can happen. And when I say miracle, I mean a shift in perspective that seems something seemingly impossible can become possible. Now let's just imagine for a moment that peace truly could be declared in the areas of this planet that are most war-torn and have been war-torn for a very, very long time, i.e. passing from one generation to the next. Notice I'm not saying where. There's a reason for that, because these stories have been playing out for a very long time in key spots around the world, and they continue to, because we are holding the trauma in our cellular memory and we are passing it from one generation to the next. So I'm going to speak specifically to the St. George's flag, and also what I'm seeing is coming up and how people are jumping onto this conversation and what it's bringing up for them, because ultimately there is an original refugee story, and I think this is really important to speak to. I'm not going to speak about it in this video, but please do follow me if you would like to hear about it, because it's actually to do with our extraterrestrial origins, or certainly to do with the history of this planet that isn't talked about, and it is well beyond what is documented in our search engines. Now, of course, I did use the Google search engine to actually get some answers here, and I also did look at the BBC and what the BBC had to say about this issue, remembering that some people see the BBC as the British Broadcasting Corporation and other people see it as the British Brainwashing Corporation. It's up to you how you see it. Let me know in the comments. And I also want to say that in this book I do address this issue, not specifically about flags, but about being discerning, and about specifically how we can get played emotionally at times when emotions are very high. And it's important to remember that at this point in time, I'm seeing humanity going through a massive compassion awakening. People that before were indifferent to plights going on in other countries and other parts of the world are now making it their business to not keep quiet. And although they may be easily manipulated if they're coming from their own unprocessed wounding, they can also be beacons of light and the frequency of unity consciousness if they are standing up and speaking for what is desired, which is for us to unite in diversity rather than to keep taking turns pitching against each other and creating more division. Now remember, the way this planet has worked for so long is keep people in division, and that way you can control them, right? Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. It's the oldest trick in the book. So here we have a conversation in the United Kingdom, in England specifically, about which flags are okay to fly. And I actually looked at where this all started, because we have been flying flags from other nations to show our solidarity with what's been going on in other countries and saying, we hear you, we see you. But then this issue is coming up now where the St. George's flag is being flown everywhere, and it's basically being flown as a symbol to say, hey, what about us? We are important too. Why don't we matter in a country which seems to be taking care of everyone else but their own? Now, this is the way things are portrayed, and it is certainly true for many people's experience. I am not here to cast judgment. I want to make this super clear. I'm here just to bring to light what I see is hidden and to invite us to make some conscious choices about what we want to do. So, what's interesting is to remember the way that we are each influenced by the algorithms of our socials and also what we tune into. So depending on how we show our preferences for certain beliefs, certain behaviours, certain attitudes, we know that the scrolling wall will basically shift according to what we want to see validated. And I've seen very different scrolling walls on my own wall, my partner's wall, my daughter's wall, everyone's wall that I get to have a chance to have a look at has something different going on. Why is that? Because it's playing into our perception. And that's how every one of us is controlling our own reality. We are shaping our reality by what we focus on. And it's important to remember that what we focus on subconsciously is generally more powerful than what we focus on consciously. But we have this story of flag wankers, I've heard, where people are just getting caught up in the fight, not really even understanding what it's all about, getting into that nationalist pride and saying, hey, I want to do my flag too, so I'm just going to share it everywhere. And then we say, well, if we're doing this in order to be directly confrontational, to kick up a storm, whether this has actually been engineered in the first place is a whole other point, right? And it's about opening ourselves up to being discerning and seeing the bigger picture. Now, if on one person's wall, they're seeing that St. George's flags are being pulled down, Union Jack flags are being pulled down, but other flags are allowed to be displayed, then there is concern there about why that is the case. On these same walls, you will then find conversations around the fact that, in our country, people are coming from abroad, needing homes, asylum seekers, refugees, and they're getting housed at the expense of people who are born in this country and are needing support and are ending up on the street. This is one person's wall I've seen. I've seen other people's walls as well, which is much more about, people who are flying the St. George's flags are just being dickheads. And how intelligent one is depends on whether or not there are many flags that are St. George's flags flying in your area. i.e., the more St. George's flags, the less intelligent you are, the more you are just buying into this and going with it. Now, as I said, the important thing is to be aware that we're all being fed slightly different stories. Where did this lead me to? Well, actually, it led me to explore. It led me to explore what the mainstream was saying. Now, according to the BBC, and this was an article I actually read online earlier, this whole thing started because a young girl, I think at a school in Birmingham, went dressed up on a cultural representation. Everyone was there to celebrate their culture and wore something that represented the Union Jack. And basically, she was told not to, right? And this then created a massive scene because everyone's there celebrating their own cultures, but we can't do that if we're British. This is then attributed to nationalism and to extreme far-rightism, right? Now, this is a situation that's interesting and it does relate to compassion because as we are awakening more to compassion and seeing what's going on in the world and saying it's just not okay for people to die, for other people to have power. It's just not okay for people to die in the name of a holy war. It's just not okay anymore to fight over land and also religion and also anything that is an old story that is being played out because it hasn't been healed. And there's always been those who've been oppressed and those who are the oppressors. But we are moving beyond duality consciousness now. We are moving into unity consciousness. That is the invitation of moving beyond the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Interestingly, the age of Pisces relating strongly to the story of Jesus Christ and, of course, Christianity that was formed from whatever interpretation of this story we have all received. And actually, what has really led me to explore is this concept of a God that is focused on sacrifice, that love is sacrifice. And this does relate to the St. George's flag, and it actually does relate to well, all of the patriarchal religions that are currently kicking off big time one way or another, and many people are turning to because of the state of the world. It's like we're going backwards. We're seeking refuge in the Holy Father that we must obey. And if we obey and we are good children, then we give our power to the Lord and we do as we're told. I'm talking about Christians here, but it can be interpreted in any religion that has a single Godhead and has an austere single Godhead. And we can say, oh, let me go back to, basically feeling safe in the bigness because I'm so scared. We will all go back to the origins of our conditioning when fear is triggered, my friends. We will go back to what we were brought up around in the earliest years of our life because that is what we know. It is familiar. Even if we don't like it, we will resort to it because it's familiar. And you may have heard of the comfort zone, which is not actually a comfort zone, but it's the uncomfortable, familiar zone that we go back to because it's familiar. Now, what I'm seeing in this whole situation is, yes, deliberate attempts to create some kind of confrontation. Also, the fact that people are triggered into response depending on their wounding, on their education, on what they have been taught to believe is right and wrong. And originally, the St. George's flag is linked to the Crusaders, and interestingly enough, they were related to basically seeking to make sure that I think it was to do with the Muslim faith, that they were reclaiming wherever it seemed that, other religions were taking over. So this seems like a very old argument coming back to life. Why is it coming back to life now and light to now? Because it was never healed. And it is important for us to heal it and to evolve beyond nationalism, beyond this idea of good versus bad, and to say, hold on a minute, whatever our difference is, we are all humans. What does it mean to be humane? What does it mean to have compassion? What does it mean to actually be the higher octave of this physical being that has a heart and can be connected to our soul consciousness or not? Because that is the choice. And spirituality and religion are not the same thing, but religion, as I understand it, was seeking in some way to keep people connected to their soul consciousness, humans connected to their soul consciousness. Where it's all gone a little bit strange is where it was also about having to believe in a certain set of rules in order to be favoured by the divine. Now, where do we go with this? Look at your wall, see what you are being shown. Are you shown pro something, anti something else? Look into that. How does it make you feel? Because in this whole conversation, what matters more than anything is actually what is triggered in you. What are the beliefs? What are the narratives? What are the stories? Because if you are ending up in separation inside of yourself, where you're deciding that there is an enemy that you must fight against, you are being played, my friend. Okay? This is how we have been controlled forevermore. The important thing is for us to evolve beyond fighting, because actually that is the point, is for us to learn how to overcome the tendency to try and annihilate what seems separate and different to us. That's xenophobia, full stop. We could be actually xenophobic to aspects of our own consciousness. Now, there are those who have been taking down St. George's flags, as we said, well-meaning, misinformed. Well, if one's goose, the goose is good for the gander, right? So if one rule is going to apply to some, does it apply to all? It should, really, right? But we are coming from an age of having no political correctness into an age of seeking to be politically correct and almost stumbling over ourselves to do the right thing, whatever the right thing is. And I think it's important for us to remember that when people are displaced, they are traumatized. So there are those that believe that if you're going to end up in another country, you should adopt the culture of that country, you should adopt the way of life of that country and not expect to bring your way of life to it. Understand that. But on the other side of this, I can also understand that those who have their customs and their beliefs and their way of being are going to seek refuge in it. And so they're going to want to be able to have the familiar around them. And it's understandable that countries that are seeking to be compassionate would do that. Now, there is a whole other conversation I'll have in another video, which is about how we can actually resolve the refugee crisis once and for all around the world. And this does relate to the original refugee wound, which I will be speaking about. And as I said, follow me to find out more here on StarPeace and also on RozyGlow. And if you're not yet subscribed to the RozyGlow YouTube channel, please do subscribe, because I'll be doing a Rozy Raw live Confessions of a Light Leader there about my relationship with grace, as I understand grace, and also this idea of this God that we believe in, that major religions believe in on this planet, is perhaps not the God of our universe, but maybe just the God of our solar system. Hold your horses on that, let me explain. And also how that God is a sacrificial God, in that it's all about sacrifice through love, which relates to the age of Pisces. But we're moving beyond that now. We're moving into the wisdom era, where sacrifice is not going to be as helpful as leading by example. More coming on that. For now, what are your views? What has this triggered in you? And have you explored what the story of St. George is? Have you looked at what it's all about? Have you also looked at the origins of this recent flare-up that is obviously a huge topic of discussion amongst so many, and many arguments, because we come to believe that if we don't share the same belief, then somehow we have to dominate and usurp whoever else has a belief, because we're not allowed to have differing opinions. And actually, unity is not going to come from all of us thinking and feeling the same thing. It is going to come from us agreeing on some universal principles we can all live by, and accepting our differences. And humane humanity does not seek to cause suffering to self or others or the environment. So those are our unifying principles. Now, what can we actually do to use this situation to actually create healing rather than more conflict? Well, the first step is actually in neutrality. Neutrality is about bringing yourself out of the right, the wrong, the opinions, and just to come to a place where you can create neutrality inside yourself, and you can be aware of the triggers that are showing up for you. So whatever tools you actually have, whether maybe you're into EFT and you can tap it all out, even though I feel XYZ, I deeply love and accept myself. Maybe you're used to working with the sphere of compassion, the way I do and I teach in the Lunar Alchemy Lives, which is part of the StarPeace Paradise Earth portal, and also my masterclasses and my yoga. If you want to know more about that, you can go to the link in my bio, rozyglow.com/events, and you can check out there the information that's around the portal, around the yoga, and also around the coaching programs on offer if you want to dive deeper into living this principle of being the vibration you want to see in this world. This is the key for those of us who are here to hold the frequency of the new earth. Now, depending on who you are and your current role as a starseed, you will have something different to do. The system busters are here to stand up and be counted, to stand up and say, I am for peace, I am for unity consciousness, I am for all life being sacred. Notice I didn't say anti anything, and I didn't say fighting for anything, because it's in unity when we stand and we be counted and we sing and we dance and we unify our energies together consciously, that we have powerful change taking place. The energizers of this new earth, your job, my dear friends, is to make sure that you are only sharing things on socials and energizing things on socials and talking about things that are actually what you want to create. What good can come from this? How do you see this situation resolving? What would be the best possible outcome that you can see taking place? This steers the conversation away from the problem to the solution. The builders of the new earth are here to help clear trauma. So you're a therapist, you're a coach, you're a mentor, you're here, like me, sharing a conversation to open people's eyes and perspectives to something different to what they thought. And the important thing is, anytime we are motivated into an action, to remember, are you coming from your wounding, or are you coming from your higher self-consciousness, where you are stepping forward using your power and your consciousness wisely in alignment with the highest good and the win-win-win in everything. The visionaries, so the architects of the new earth, we are here to hold the frequency of the world beyond this. So imagine a world where national flags are kind of all brought together. We've kind of played at this before, but actually what they do is they create a massive global flag with all of the individual flags as part of it, and that is the image that we all connect to, where we decide not to all be exactly the same, but to unify into diversity. Now, in this book, very good, by the way, you can buy it on Amazon, I have a chapter, so StarPeace 101, How to Create Peace in One Generation. Chapter 7, what's up with all the rainbows and why there are real and Disney unicorns. What's this all about? Well, it's about how the symbol of the rainbow has been used in a way to separate us rather than unite us. And it's how we can look at something from a perspective where we are united in diversity rather than separated, and more separation, more and more identification on specific labels, creating more and more division rather than connection. The other element around the unicorns is the ability to be discerning. And there's one particular bit I wanted to read to you, because nationalism has been huge, and understanding our own self-identity is important. Like being sovereign in our energy is important before we unify with others. But in the end, we're all individual droplets in the ocean of the divine. When we come to accept that we are both the ocean of love and we are also the individual droplet, that's when we start to have real fun, because we're not seeking to assert our individuality because we feel so threatened by the oneness. We're all part of the oneness, my friend, all of us. So to understand the difference between authentic spiritual evolution and its synthetic imitation, let's consider the metaphor of unicorns. In spiritual traditions, unicorns are seen as guardians of miracles and magic, beings that embody divine consciousness and soul essence. Compare this to commercialized versions, which, while cute, lack the profound spiritual essence of their mystical counterparts. Rather than judging one as good and the other as bad, which I have been prone to do, by the way, consider what the two ends of the spectrum potentially symbolise. Connection to source consciousness, the real unicorns, versus surface level spiritual belief, the Disney ones. MultiDimensional transformation, the real unicorns, versus cosmetic change, the Disney ones. Just on the surface level spirituality, surface level awakeness, surface level unity consciousness. You know what I mean? This is the important one. Unity consciousness versus tribal identity. Now, anytime we're doing a them against us and we are prepared to keep creating separation as the fun, this is when we're really coming into trouble, my friends, because we do it with all sorts of sports games, right? And then we have issues like hooliganism. We have issues where, we end up becoming very thuggish in our behaviour. And again, this brings us to issues around oxytocin and adrenaline. The fact that we have been stress hormone dominant for so long in our circuitry as human beings that it seems as though it's the only way it's ever been. But it's not the only way it's ever been. Okay? We can rewire our consciousness, our nervous system to be love hormone dominant. And this is the invitation. At the moment, we have gone from a fear-demic back in 2020 that lasted for quite a while, now into bringing to light all of the trauma that's going on in the world, all of the things that are being done in the name of progress, in the name of advancement, in the name of religion, in the name of the divine. I mean, what is being done is insane. And I feel it is absolutely crazy to be living in a world where we will kill each other because of what we believe. And particularly crazy that we'll bring God into it or the divine into it and claim that somehow this is a holy war. So if we are going to take arms against each other, whether they're flags, whether they're actual arms, and insist that someone is wrong and someone else is right because of what they believe, and what they believe isn't actually harming themselves or another person or the environment, we have to ask why. Where did that come from and for what reason? Because we're living in an era where we're still recovering from patriarchal paradigm. What so many forget that is at the root of the conflict on this planet is actually around austerity. It is around others insisting that they must dominate in order to feel safe. And what has been written out of our history is her story, is the 13,000, 25,000 odd years where the divine was seen as feminine rather than masculine. And one could say that the divine, source, God, whatever you want to call it, is omnipresent, is neither feminine nor masculine. It's beyond gender. And I totally agree with that. But the important thing for us to understand as mere mortals is that we seek to understand everything through us. And this is perhaps how we have created God in our image, right? Rather than the other way around. Now, I'm going to leave this here. I would love to know your thoughts on all of this, and actually how you can be part of the solution rather than the problem is going to be around you dealing with what this is bringing up for you, being very, very clear about the beliefs that are getting triggered in you, and then asking yourself the question, do I really want to believe that? And if you would like to be part of a community that literally is a scrolling wall of positivity, a scrolling wall of perspective shifts, a scrolling wall of coming back to the root, then go to the link in my bio and check out Manifesting StarPeace Utopia. It is a private group that you can come and join on socials, and I'm inviting you to come and join that, because that is where I go live with the energy updates that I do every month. And these energy updates are actually soul mission updates for those of us who are light leaders and awakening star seeds, leading the way through our frequency, our intention, and the work that we do in this world. In the meantime, I look forward to your feedback, and I invite you to remember that there's always so much more to this than what we've been told, and whatever is published, whatever is available to everybody to consume with our senses isn't all there is about the matter. It's just what we've been told. And remember, it goes through filters of time, of generations, and narratives do change with time. So consider the narrative that you want to energize. So much love.